It's that time, everybody. The Process Show is back. 11 a.m., slightly after Eastern Time. Myself, Adam, we are back again 2 days in a row. You just can't get enough of us sometimes. Here to break down how well Luke Giolito played yesterday. Whoops, missed out on that one. But what are you going to do? Good analysis, bad outcome. I'll take the Process. What do you think about Giolito?
It gives us an opportunity next time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hopefully it'll just bring his ownership down for 6 days from now.
Yeah, exactly.
So, one quick plug before we get into it. Michael Kopech's FanDuel fantasy points tonight. If you drop your projection for that number in either the comments to this video, the comments in the strategy video we had earlier today, or the comments of the live stream tonight, they need to be in before lock, not his game, but lock in general. Closest person, and you can go over, will get a free month of all access subscription to awesemo.com. Again, Michael Kopech's FanDuel points. Project that into the comments, not the chat, and you have a chance to win a free month. Can't beat it. You don't even have to really do anything. Alrighty, so I don't think we have too much to talk about for Giolito. Got a little hit unlucky. And, you know, we'll check it out in a couple days. I don't have too much else to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, from the little bit I saw, I mean, he only got 4 outs or whatever, but the stuff looked good. He had a really good first inning, and then the second inning, it seemed like he got squeezed a little bit, gave up some really unfortunate hits, and then was done.
Yeah, 1 in the third, 4 hits, 4 earned, no homers, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts. Like, I don't know really how to manage something like that. It's obviously not good, you know. Well, like, we didn't come out of that better off, but
right.
That could have been significantly worse. No big power or anything. If he had 3 home runs or something in that time, I think you could glean a little bit more information from it. But I'm going to chalk it up to a little bit of bad luck.
Yeah, it happens.
It does happen. So Jake and I went in relatively, well, at least I went in relatively deep on this stance at the end of our show. So we might have a little bit of overlap here, but we probably don't have too much to dig into. Mike Leake's expected ownership on DraftKings today is 38% on a 12-game slate. So that's 24 pitchers for those of you that struggle with 12 times 2. Is there any scenario where you would want to be even in the ballpark of 38% Mike Leake today?
No. To me, it's one of those situations, and they come up a lot, especially in baseball, where you're dealing with volatility and, you know, a lot of variance. Someone that makes for a good cash game play very often doesn't make for a good tournament play, because in cash games, you're kind of looking to decrease your volatility and increase your floor. And there's no doubt that, you know, Mike Leake is really cheap and he's facing a bad Orioles team in a good park. So if you need a cheap SP2, like in cash games, sure, you know, take the probably like 12 points that Mike Leake, 12 to 15 points Mike Leake will get you and move on. But in tournaments, there's on top of, you know, the benefits of being contrarian and not, you know, having the same lineup, same build as the rest of the field, you kind of want to embrace volatility and be willing to take on a lower floor for an increased ceiling. And Mike Leake doesn't give you that. So talking about, you know, range of outcomes, it's one way that I like to kind of evaluate chalk pitching and decide if I want to go underweight or what I want to do with it. You know, it's even if Mike Leake does really well for his price tag and gets like 18 fantasy points, that's obviously good, but it's still 18 fantasy points. Like the raw point total it's not that if you don't have an 18-point pitcher, you can't win in a different way on the slate. And someone of Mike Leake's skill set, it's just so difficult for them to put you in a position where you can't win a tournament without them if you don't have them. But anytime you play a pitcher that is, you know, 30 to 40% owned, it's very easy for them to put you in a position where you can't win a tournament with them.
Yeah.
So to me, it's just, you know, a spot where I would much rather take that ownership and diversify it around a bunch of, you know, I guess riskier pitchers, but also lower owned pitchers who I think have higher raw point ceilings than Leake does.
I completely agree. That was sort of the stance that we were getting to. Even if that ownership drops from 38% to say 25, I still don't want to be there. There's just no appeal for me.
Right.
It's not like there's a ton of like awesome guys around that spot. But there's also no one that's really expensive on this slate outside of Luis Severino, 11.9. Next closest is Zack Wheeler. He's someone that's not really getting any ownership. So already you're down into the 9K pitchers. I don't need to save the money on Leak. There are plenty of teams to stack out there. At the end of our show previously, I wiped Leak from my player pool completely and still was able to get most of the chalk teams as my top stacks. I still had no trouble getting to Rockies and Rangers and Angels and Astros. And it's not like those guys are all ridiculously cheap. It's just that there's not really a barrier to get to those teams. So I can't imagine wanting to spend that money on Mike Leake. The chances of him bombing and ruining 38% of your lineups are way higher than him being the reason that you're at the top of a GPP.
Right. And like you and I were talking before the show, just the way the slate breaks down, if you look at other pitchers in his price range, there's not anyone that, necessarily is in a great matchup like he is and that jumps out as particularly likely to beat Mike Leake any given day.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of pitchers in that price range that have enough talent to beat him because he's not very good. So if you kind of just spread out around those guys, it's not really that difficult to come out ahead.
No, not at all. I will not have Mike Leake tonight unless his ownership drops to single digits, at which point then I'll happily have a couple shares of him because it won't matter any longer.
Right.
But
yeah, I mean, I think the number would be like 10 to 15% for me to go to League.
Yep, agreed. He does grade out well for me.
Yeah.
I understand why people would want him, but I don't want to be with those people once I have that information.
Right, exactly. It's I saw a tweet the other day that made sense, and it's something that I think as a tournament player, it's important to remind yourself. You're not actually trying to predict outcomes so much as you're trying to put yourself in positions to win a lot of money when a certain outcome happens.
Yes.
So there's it's a difference. Yeah, Mike Leake probably is the best point per dollar play in that range, and it's why he's a good cash game play. But if Mike Leake goes out and has a good game, that's not winning you as much money in terms of expected value as if you don't have Mike Leake and he has a bad game.
Yeah. If let's say it stays at 38, which I don't necessarily expect it to. If Mike Leake puts up 7 or something today, which he has done regularly. I still have it up here so I can click on it. I'm just going to read off his most recent starts. This is all the way back to July 1st. Most recent start. -4. Great start so far. 11. And he had a big game against Oakland at $6,000, which I think is interesting. 28 fantasy points. That's the one you're trying to avoid, basically.
Right.
And it won't kill you if you don't have it, but it's going to be a pretty big problem. You're going to need to find someone else that does something similar. But 12, 13, 10, 11, 14, -6, 5. That's one game since July where if you don't have Mike Leake at the ownership that he has today, you're in some trouble. Otherwise, you're going to be in a significantly better spot, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then obviously you can even sort of double down if you're not playing Mike Leake, just be overweight on the Orioles.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're bad, and their run total 3.2, not appealing, second lowest on the slate. There's power there. If you I'll happily have 4 or 5 lines of Orioles if I'm running 150. I mean, I'll have a little bit more than 150, but I'm going to have some bullets of the Orioles by default because Mike Leake is going to have X amount of ownership higher than I expect. So, yeah.
And the top of their order really isn't that bad. I mean, the team is very, but 1 through 5, or 1 through 6 even, I mean, they all have some power.
Yeah. Chris Davis is, well, he's Chris Davis, but I mean, no one denies that when he squares a ball up, it's not it's going to go.
Yeah. And when you play Chris Davis, you would like it to be against a guy who has struck out 11% of left-handed hitters this year.
That's a great point. Chris Davis, known strikeout master. When you get to have an opportunity to face someone that is kind of the opposite, Mike Leake is essentially like the inverse version of Chris Davis pitching. So
yeah, I think I said that about Phil Meyer the other day though before he struck out Davis 3 or 4 times. So.
Great stance then. Okay, we're on the same page then. Do not play Mike Leake under any set of circumstances at 38% ownership in a tournament. That is you're going to be hurt way more than you're helped by that.
Yep.
So we've got two studs at the top. Well, relative top of the slate today. Tyler Glasnow, Michael Kopech. Who do you want to start with?
Start with Kopech.
Okay. Kopech, 9,000 on DK. Expected ownership, 9%. He is 8,000 on FanDuel. Expected ownership, 7%. Now, there is a caveat here. As per usual, Kopech's doing some sort of rain dance on a day that he's supposed to start, and it might get a little wet. So I think that we need to approach this with the caveat of assuming this game can go off without any issues from weather.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, he's been knocked out of games in the third inning, I think it is, in 2 of his first 3 starts.
Yeah. Yes, he has. I can't imagine. So at 9% on DK, on my most recent crunch, I got 30. I can't imagine if he stays at 9, I'm going to have 30 plus, barring any like really ridiculous rain news.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically the opposite of what we just talked about with Mike Leake as far as range of outcomes go. He is a volatile pitcher. We still don't have, any sort of sample size at the major league level on him, but he's facing a Tigers team that isn't very good. And we know that he has electric stuff to where when he does have his good games, they're going to be very high scoring games. They're not going to be, 20 points. They're not going to be 20 fantasy points. Like when he has all of his stuff working, he's going to go out there and put up 30 plus fantasy points.
Yeah.
And that's what you're looking for at low ownership. So, you're hoping that his breaking ball command is what I think is going to be the really important thing for him. And that's obviously not something that you can predict, start to start. It's just going to be there or it's not. But if it's there, he's going to be virtually unhittable. And it just gives you, ridiculous upside at low ownership.
I couldn't agree more. And I really saw this show as us being like generically opposed to so many things. And it's like talking to a mirror for myself now. We're just like, yeah, but we both really like Kopech. We don't want Leak. We're playing the same game here.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I'm just looking at some of Kopech's stuff. His last couple of starts, his fastball velocity has been down, which I don't know that it means anything, but I wish he was throwing 97 and not 95.
That's a very good point. Speaking of that, I wanted to bring that up. Danny Duffy out for the season.
Yeah. Yeah, it took him less than an inning?
Yeah. Yep, done. So that velocity drop, very, very telling, just FYI. I think we mentioned it while we were live yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we talked about it.
Yeah, so there you go. Danny Duffy, already done. Didn't take long. Less than 24 hours later, and it already happened. I don't mind so much when I see a velocity drop for Kopech because I could see him learning how to pitch in the majors on the fly and not just letting it loose like he did in the minors. Right.
That's my thought as well. And I was pulling up his plate discipline now to see if maybe his first pitch strike percentages were up or his zone percentages were up. Last game, first pitch strike percentage was only 50%, but the start before that, he was at like 77%. His first start was 70. So yeah, that's my guess is that he's trying to locate more.
Yeah.
Which it does concern me as far as strikeouts go.
Sure.
I mean, we're talking about a guy with electric stuff. I want him to use his electric stuff. But it's still, 95 is still hard.
Yeah. He's not suddenly 88.
Right. He's not doing like the Kevin Gausman thing where last year he threw 99 and then he came out this year throwing 91.
Exactly.
It's still a good fastball. The strikeouts haven't been there through his first, start and whatever you want to call the other two, only 18.8%. But one thing I did notice watching his games too is his first time through the order, he basically is throwing nothing but fastballs. And while I think that's good, it sets him up later in games. It's going to make it so he doesn't get as many strikeouts early if he keeps doing that. And it runs the risk, I think, of him having the issue that he had in that first start where Minnesota just fouled off a million pitches because he was just throwing, fastball after fastball. But I think that it'll set him up for more strikeouts potentially later in the game as he starts mixing in the slider and the changeup, and these guys didn't see all of his stuff the first time through. So I think it's a trade-off, and we haven't really seen it happen yet since he's been forced out of 2 of his 3 starts early.
Pitch value data. Don't know how much you look at it. You mentioned Kopech throwing. Kopech is the amount. I tried to work that in. I was going to go with copious, try to make it sound like Kopech. Didn't really work like I thought it would. But anyway, throwing a ton of fastballs. I think it's interesting to see that on FanGraphs, the Tigers 29th against the fastball this year. Probably not the spot you want to rank.
No, I remember them talking about that on the last time he pitched against them. I was listening to the Tigers broadcast, and they were saying how, I think it was probably Castellanos, is like the only guy on the team that has any sort of chance of like hitting hard fastballs.
And that doesn't really surprise me. He's sort of the only person on the team that has a chance to hit anything ever.
Right.
Not a big fan of the Tigers bats. Sorry, V-Mart. I loved you a decade ago, but I assume your reaction time is just not quite the same as it used to be.
Right.
So yeah.
I just pulled up Kopech's pitch usage by inning, and obviously it's kind of skewed since he has only gone 6 innings in one of his starts.
Yeah.
But 82% fastballs in the first inning, drops to 78% in the second, 64% in the third, 33% in the fourth, and then it starts ticking back up to like 56 and 65.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So I think it's good that he's establishing his fastball early and then kind of trying to save his other stuff for other trips through the order. I think it just kind of also can make for a frustrating first couple of innings potentially.
Is he throwing that slider more or the changeup more as his second pitch? I know.
Slider.
Okay.
Yeah, he's first inning he's at 16%, then it goes to 17.5, 24, 53. The changeup increases as well, but like the highest percentage changeup usage in any inning is like 13% in the fourth inning.
Okay. Tigers 25th against the slider per FanGraphs here. Kopech, I'm liking him more and more so long as he has the ability to throw more than 2 innings today.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Mother Nature, can you help me out here?
Yeah.
Please.
And he's going to be completely unowned on FanDuel too. I mean, we've been seeing like 15% DraftKings ownership kind of regardless of what his price point is.
Yeah.
But on FanDuel, he's obviously you only roster the one pitcher, so that drives it down. But he's 1,300 more than Glass now, so people just aren't going to go there.
Right. 7% expected ownership for Kopech. I expect to see that stay under 10. And again, I'm trying to win a GPP here, and he's the guy that I want to be over the field on.
Right.
10% is not keeping me away.
If you're like scrolling through mid-range pitchers and kind of just, ignoring who they're facing and just thinking about like, yes or no, does this guy have the potential to put up a score that, is a top 3 at the position? Kopech's one of the guys in that range that the answer is yes.
Yeah. So I do the calculation of chances of being the top scoring pitcher on FanDuel. So just number 1, but switching that to 2 or 3, you'll have a similar proxy for it. Only 3 guys have a higher than 10% chance per my model of being the top scoring pitcher on FanDuel. Luis Severino, which I don't think anybody is going to bat an eye at. Michael Kopech, Tyler Glasnow.
Yeah,
there you go.
That seems about right.
One of those guys is priced at 10,800. The other 2 are at 8,000 and 6,700. So I'm going to side with the value with the same upside, or similar upside to Severino.
Right. And then especially on FanDuel as well, you don't lose points for the guys that Glasnow and Kopech walk.
Exactly. And one of those guys is probably going to walk a few.
Yeah.
Just because that's how they sort of work. I thought that I liked Kopech a lot this morning. Seeing how bad Detroit is against fastballs, against sliders, knowing how much Kopech throws said fastball, if he can locate that at all, I think we're in for a really big Kopech night. I just hope he can play more than 3 innings.
They were the one start that he actually got the pitch.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't great. Like, I think he had like 18 DraftKings points, struck out 15%, had a 10.5% swinging strike rate. So, I mean, yeah, it wasn't anything like earth-shattering, but that also isn't his ceiling. So I'm not really too concerned about it.
Perfect. Do you have anything else you want to touch on for Kopech, or do we want to hop over and take a look at Glasnow?
No, let's take a look at Glasnow.
Perfect. Glasnow. Let's find him again because I resorted this. Oh yeah, 6,700 on FanDuel. This is behind Jaime Barria, behind Mike Leake, behind Mike Fiers, Miles Michaelis. Like, these are all guys that have a higher price point than Tyler Glasnow on FanDuel. Glasnow
Yeah.
9,500 on DK. That's a bit more reasonable. Only 4% expected ownership right now to Glasnow on DK. I have 21, and I couldn't be happier about it. I think you're in the same boat. So give me your thoughts on Glasnow overall.
Yeah, I mean it's really similar analysis to Kopech. Like I think they're really similar pitchers. They come with downside because of their control issues. Glass now has a bit of, I guess, added downside because he's absolutely incapable of controlling the running game. So when he puts guys on, it's very easy for them to quickly be in scoring position. And that is something that scares me. But his stuff is absolutely electric as well. And when he's able to throw strikes, that, he's basically unhittable. So obviously he spent a lot of time in the bullpen this year, so his numbers are a bit skewed, but he has the highest strikeout percentage on the slate at 30.7%, which is 2% higher than Severino. So the upside clearly is there, even if you discount a little bit and make him a starter. But also, I mean, he's coming off some tough matchups. Like he faced Boston 3 starts ago. He faced Cleveland last start. Toronto, I think, is a much better spot for him. He actually faced them August 12th, had a 15.2% swinging strike rate. They swung at 32% of pitches out of the strike zone, which obviously is good to see. I think he's had a really good start there. He struck out 33% of the hitters he faced, walked 11%. So I guess one thing that I would want to look at with Glasnow, because we still haven't seen his walk issue really improve. Like over his last 4 starts, he only walked 4% against Cleveland, but before that he walked 13%, 12%, 11%. So one thing I would want to pull up is Toronto's plate discipline numbers as a team and just check and see like where they rank in terms of O swing percentage over the last month or so, and also just in terms of walk percentage.
Let's take a look at it. So, do you want to limit that to handedness, or are you good with just like last 30 days?
Yeah, just active roster last 30 days.
Okay.
I don't want to cut it down too much.
Understood. We could do all just so we can get a nice look of everybody. O swing percentage was the first one I think you mentioned?
Yeah.
Okay. Blue Jays in O swing percentage ranking 17th in the last 30 days. So middle of the pack, 31%.
Yeah, so not great, but not bad.
Average. Blue Jays swinging strike percentage 9th. So missing a little bit from a hitting perspective lately. What else do you want to take a look at?
Their overall walk percentage. Or actually, I still have it up. So just swing percentage overall, they rank...
They're 6th in walk rate in the last 30 days.
6th highest?
Yes.
Okay. And they're 15th in overall swing percentage. So it's not, in terms of plate discipline numbers, it's not a spot where like I feel better about Glasnow than I did, before, but it's not a spot that I'm, overly concerned either. Like if we were talking about a team that is clearly, very patient and they're going to make him throw strikes before they swing the bat, then it becomes a real concern. But now it's basically just kind of like, okay, it's not as good as I was hoping, but it's not changing a whole lot.
Yeah. Look, I like to see that they are, top 10 in swinging strike rate.
Yeah, for sure.
At least that gives me the silver lining of they're still missing.
Right. And yeah, I mean, we know he has the stuff to generate swings and misses.
Sure.
Like if he's throwing in the strike zone, we know that he's going to be fine.
Yeah. Blue Jays 7th against the fastball this year. Glasnow throwing a fastball. I had it here. 70-something% of the time. Yeah, 73% four-seam fastballs, 25% curveball. So it's just fastball, curveball, fastball, curveball. You're not getting a lot of variance there. Against the curveball, the Jays on Fangraphs are 22nd. So if he can get himself into advantageous counts, the Jays have proven that they are still swinging and missing. Trying to decide between a 97-mile-an-hour four-seam fastball and 84-mile-an-hour curve. If he's ahead of counts, that's going to be really tricky for them.
Yeah. I just pulled up their individual numbers against like hard fastballs, and they're actually, a lot of them are really good.
Okay.
in terms of like expected WOBA, expected ISO, and swinging strike percentage. So that's concerning.
Yeah.
It doesn't make me question his ceiling. Obviously, it just makes me like if I'm trying to decide between him and Kopech, it makes me feel a little bit better about Kopech because of the matchup.
That I agree with. I do feel significantly
like I still
better.
like Glasnow. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I think Glasnow's floor is significantly lower.
Yeah.
Not that you're worried about their floor really in either situation, but I think there's more scenarios where this goes poorly for Glasnow than it does for Kopech, barring weather.
And it's pretty easy to choose guys to target against Glasnow too. Like if you're looking, especially on FanDuel where he's really cheap, if you're looking to leverage against him a bit, you can always full stack because he has a tendency to walk so many guys.
Yeah.
But guys that have speed, like looking at Billy McKinney at the top, he's going to steal every time he reaches base.
Yeah. Yeah. And if it is, like you said, if it is going bad for Glasnow, we're going to see base runners. We're going to see him throwing from the stretch. And we're going to get into a core of a lineup of Smoke, Morales, and Grichuk that have, projected higher than 200 ISOs. These are guys that will take advantage of a missed pitch.
Wow, Billy McKinney does not steal bases. That is really surprising to me.
Really?
Yeah, he's not even fast.
Is it the name Billy that makes you think that he does?
Combined with being like a leadoff hitting outfielder that doesn't really hit for a ton of power.
Yeah, he had 50 speed as a scout score.
Yeah. So does Gurriel. Okay, so there's like no speed. This will be a test for Glasnow. Like these guys probably can still steal on him.
Do Kevin the Blue Jays swipe bags like as a whole?
I'm guessing no, since they don't have anyone that's fast.
Let's get these team stats. We'll take a look. Who has the most stolen bases on here? Well, not the most, but
Kevin Pillar's got 13.
Blue Jays are 29th in the league in stolen bases this year.
Yeah, not surprising. Okay, so I really like Kevin Pillar actually.
Yeah, I like Smoke quite a bit. Smoke better against righties than lefties. 3,300 on FanDuel, 5% expected ownership. That's a really nice bargain first base option if you were looking for a one-off and you're not quite the believer in Glasnow. I like the idea of stacking the Jays more than one-offing them, though.
Yeah. So Pillar has 13 stolen bases, and then if you look at his numbers against fastballs like 93 to 96, a 446 expected WOBA, 345 expected WOBA against fastballs 96 plus, sub 10% swinging strike rate. So I think he can actually do some damage against Glasnow if he can get ahead in counts. Doesn't have a high strikeout percentage overall, and then he will run. So I mean, that's a guy that he's going to be 2%, 2% owned.
Yeah.
And I think actually has pretty sneaky upside.
1% we have him on FanDuel right now. Same on DraftKings. And the thing that's keeping him down in my model is simply just the Blue Jays have a 4-run implied total.
Right.
Not awful. I mean, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 7 teams that I can see that are sub 4. So, they're in the middle of the pack for the slate. It's not as if it's just some disastrous number.
Yeah. It's a weird one, too, because I feel like it's the median, but they're probably going to score 2 runs or they're going to score 6 runs.
Yeah, I would say because of the error bars and the way that Glasnow pitches, this is either going to go really poorly for the Jays or really well.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. It's a good way to look at it. And that's sort of why in GPPs you have shares of the Jays, because the variance in Glasnow's outcome is such that if he goes bad, it's going to go really well for the Jays. He's not just going to survive. He's going to have to get very lucky to do something like that.
Right, exactly. And there's just so much upside whenever he pitches, stacking against him, because even if he only has a bad inning or two, anyone that reaches base that inning is picking up 5-10 extra points because they're just the start against Boston. I stacked Boston with all their speed guys, and it was actually really frustrating because those guys doubled or struck out or whatever, but then JD Martinez and Mitch Moreland get on base and they double steal, because that's how bad Glasnow is at holding runners.
Yeah, Mitch Moreland, not really fleet of foot.
Right.
I love this pitching slate today.
Yeah, I think it's pretty fun.
I pray that this ownership stays similar. Because if this refreshes at 5:30 and everything's changed, I'm going to be really angry.
Yeah. What do you
Go ahead.
Do you have interest in Nick Pivetta?
I do. So he's chalky, 26% on DK. I have a similar amount. 13% expected on FanDuel. I have 12. I'm right there with the field, and this is a spot where I don't mind having that chalk because I think Pivetta is good, and I think it's a good match. Like, I think he's chalky for the right reason.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good park. It's a bad team.
Yep.
He's like every Philadelphia pitcher's strikeout numbers are a lot better at home, but it's just still such a bad team. We know that they don't really hit well, and yeah, he's one of the guys where does he have the actual talent to go out and be a top scorer? And the answer is yes.
100%.
So I don't mind playing that guy at reasonably high ownership.
8,200 on DK, 8,200 on FanDuel.
Yeah, really, really nice price point.
Yeah, so he is the cruise by him. He's the 8th most expensive pitcher on DraftKings, and he is the 7th most expensive pitcher on FanDuel. I'm happy to have him. I'll be right there with the field.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me also.
I have one that we should dig into if you're interested.
Okay, go for it.
Tanner Roark today. 23% expected ownership on DraftKings.
I hate that guy so much.
10% on FanDuel. I'm not getting to him really. I don't mind the price point, but it's just sort of like a bumped up version of what we just talked about for Mike Leake for me.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine wanting to have 20+% of Tanner Roark. What are you worried about in his sort of potential outcomes that puts you behind the 8 ball?
Right.
It's not like the Cardinals are bad.
Right, exactly. I haven't looked at the weather today, but if it's in the DC area, if it's anything like it has been the last week and a half, it's going to be really, really hot and humid, which isn't great.
86 degrees last I looked. Don't have the humidity. I do have the humidity in front. 70-ish% humidity. 88 degrees. It's not great.
Right. And yeah, I mean, he's just a guy, like we saw him have a stretch of ceiling starts recently, but there was nothing that really screamed anything had changed. There was just nothing that made me think that it was sustainable. So yeah, he's just another guy where if he scores 30 something points at $7,800 and I don't have him, I can live with myself because I don't think it's going to happen that often.
Yeah. Some of his most recent starts, and I'll go back to his big one. His most recent start, 8. He had 23 against the Mets on August 25th. I mean, I think that's like your most likely good outcome, right? Roark puts up 23 on DK. 8 fantasy points in the start before that. 8 in the start before that. Another 24. This is where he had the nice stretch. He went 24, 17, 29, 41. Look, 41 is an outlier to every single person that's out there, save guys like Scherzer and stuff. That is a 1% outcome for Tanner Roark, and it's a 1% outcome for most pitchers in the league. Previous to that 41, 7, 2, -1, 5, -1. I'm going to take my chances that Roark isn't going 25 plus here. I don't see any situation where you would want to have him in a quarter of your lineups on DraftKings.
No, I completely agree. And it's another spot where you can pretty easily just take Cardinals bats against him because you get the leverage and then you also just get a god-awful Nats bullpen.
Right. Roark, 23% expected ownership on DraftKings at 7,800. I'm not like over the moon about the Cubs matchup. Jose Quintana, $100 cheaper on DraftKings, 3% expected ownership.
What's Mike Fiers' projected ownership?
7% on DraftKings, 3% on FanDuel.
Yeah, I mean, he's another one that I think has maybe not a higher ceiling, but at least the same ceiling as Roark.
Right. I would agree with that. I don't like him today specifically, but there are outcomes where he has just as much of a ceiling as Tanner Roark because that game's in Oakland.
And he's made some actual improvements. Fiers has.
Do you want to talk about him a little bit? Because I'm oddly on the Yankees on DraftKings today because of their price point.
Yeah, so I'm pulling up Fiers stuff right now. I haven't actually looked into it yet today, but I looked into it a couple starts ago. And basically, he had just been throwing his fastball higher, and it was generating more swinging strikes on the pitch. It was getting him more strikeouts, and we saw him just being much, much more effective. So I'm pulling up Brooks Baseball now to see if that's still been the case. Going to velo and movement,
Vertical
and
pitch
then
location.
yeah,
Boom.
yeah,
We're
go
gonna
game
get.
by game.
I'm just gonna learn how to use. Oh my god, that is the absolute worst graph I've ever seen in my life. I feel like I gave a pack of Crayola markers to a 4-year-old kid and was like, "Hey, do me a favor, scribble some lines. Too
Try
many
it by
pitches,
month.
too many lines." Yeah,
There you go. All right, so sort by month.
yeah. Well, we got it here.
All right. Yeah, and so you see the fastball movement, or it's not movement, location trending up for him in August in particular,
Yeah,
and that did coincide with a really really strong stretch of games up until his last one against Seattle. But before that, his plate discipline numbers were really good. The strikeouts were there. So, I hate going to guys like I hate reading too much into guys like Fiers because they have such a lengthy track record of sometimes being really good and then sometimes being really bad.
right. We've got a
Um,
sample on Fiers.
yeah, exactly. And he's someone that he does this like every year. There'll be like a stretch where he makes some adjustment and he goes from giving up 2 home runs a game to being virtually unhittable. And then it lasts for a couple of months and then he like forgets what he was doing or something. But the point for me is that while I'm not willing to like bet money that Mike Fiers for the rest of the season is a great pitcher, if he's going to be 1/5 the ownership of Tanner Roark in a better park in better weather, I'll take those chances.
I couldn't agree more. My aversion was simply that I have an overwhelming amount of Yankees on DraftKings. Stanton only $400 cheaper on DK than he is on FanDuel. McCutchen only $100 more expensive. Hicks is only $200 more expensive. Andahar $100 more expensive. Gary Sanchez only $3,500 now back in the lineup. I just like the Yankees because of their price point. It didn't have much to do with Fiers or the outcome. I'm simply just betting on guys that project as better than average hitters.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of the same argument I thought you could make for the Yankees yesterday. They don't have a high implied run total. They're not going to carry a ton of ownership,
Yeah.
and they have really talented hitters.
Yeah, outside of Sanchez projected at 10%, and I pay very little attention to catcher ownership, especially if they're coming along as part of a stack. You have to play a catcher, and there are only so many that are actually functional, good hitters. But 4% expected ownership for Stanton, as if he can't hit a ball out of Oakland's park. Not worried about it. Guys like McCutchen and Hicks and Andahar. Is it a great matchup? No, absolutely not. But these guys have natural talent, and I've seen Fiers have starts that aren't great. So I'll take my chances there from a price point. Allows me to fit in other guys that I would like. But I think that Fiers, just to get off of Roark's ownership is worth that. Fiers is worth a Flyers.
There you go. All right, so
I'm seriously the worst.
So going back to Mike Leake, if you're looking for a pivot in tournaments, obviously only in tournaments, but in that price range, I think Jake Odorizzi is a better tournament play, even though the Astros have a 5.2 implied run total than Mike Leake is against the Orioles, just in terms of upside and ownership.
That one scares me.
Assuming we get a Houston lineup with like 6 righties in it.
Yeah, Springer, Altuve, Bregman, Correa, White, Gurriel is the projected lineup right now. Reddick, McCann, Kemp at the bottom.
It's not a good spot.
No.
But if you just look, so Jake Odorizzi, and it's one of the reasons why I kind of like it too, whenever he faces right-handed heavy teams, he's an example of a guy that if you're not paying attention, your projection models baselines are like going to be completely wrong.
Yeah.
Because his entire career, basically, he's been a reverse splits guy where he was like fastball, changeup, and didn't have any sort of good breaking ball. So he just got absolutely beat up by righties. But then this year he's come out throwing a slider 35% of the time to righties with like a 12% swinging strike rate on it. He's only allowed a 336 xWOBA to righties, and then he's been giving up more power to lefties than to righties. So there's been a lot of times this year where, I'll see people loving like these right-handed hitters against him when he's been actually good against them. He's struck out 25% of righties this year. He's allowed less than 1 home run per 9 innings to him. He's allowed a 321 WOBA. So I just think it's a spot where you're getting it's a much worse matchup, but you're talking about a guy who has a 25% strikeout rate at the same price and much lower ownership than a guy who has a 12% strikeout rate.
I don't have a problem with it. I wouldn't want to have a bunch of volume of Odorizzi.
Right.
But if you need to trim 38% of Mike Leake, I don't have an issue with trickling some of that to Odorizzi.
Right. I mean, what's Odorizzi projected? Like probably 2% or something?
Flat zeros.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, if I'm playing like 150 lineups on DraftKings and I have like 10% Odorizzi, I'm way, way, way over the field.
Right. Absolutely.
And I assume the Astros will have ownership too.
Astros ownership on DK, 6% aggregate. It's higher than the average, just below the big tier of Rockies, Angels, and Rangers. They have 5% aggregate on FanDuel, a little bit lower, but still, they are getting a little bit of love. And they should, because Springer, Altuve, Bregman, and Correa are all-star level hitters.
And to be clear, there's no way I would play Odorizzi on FanDuel.
No, yeah, I totally agree with you there. Unless his price is oddly, unless he's mispriced.
He's 400 less than Tyler Glasnow.
Yeah, no, he is in an unplayable spot on FanDuel. If you want to win, if you want to go to him on FanDuel, congratulations. You are going to be very unique today.
Yeah, you will be like the only person.
Yeah.
So is Severino versus Wheeler even close for you?
No, it's not. It's not in terms of their output. I think Severino is just significantly higher. And he's not owned enough that I think that I need to pivot to Wheeler. We're not projecting any ownership to Wheeler whatsoever. 1% on FanDuel, 1% on DK. Severino, 16% on both sites. And I think all that seems right. Is Wheeler someone you're digging into?
He's a guy that I just in general really, really, really like. But I think I'm leaning towards you in that it's just kind of getting too cute here because it's a good spot for Severino. It's a good park for Severino. It's a bad matchup for Zack Wheeler just in terms of the quality of offense he's going against. And also they don't strike out a ton. So it just I think Wheeler's good enough that if he is actually like 1 or 2% owned, I would want to be higher than that.
Yeah.
But I'm not like getting rid of my Severino and playing Wheeler instead, just because I think that the Dodgers are, a good offense. If it was like the same ownership and Wheeler were facing, I don't know, a team that like is middle of the road, but offers like if you were facing like, I don't know, the White Sox or something.
Yeah.
Like I would probably just go higher on Wheeler than Severino.
Definitely.
Just because I think he is really good.
Yeah. One thing I pointed out on the show with Jake earlier today, the Dodgers average more pitches per plate appearance than any other team in baseball.
Yeah,
which is going to limit Wheeler's ceiling because, in theory, he's probably not going to be able to go as deep if they're just constantly taking him into deep counts.
Right. Yeah, we saw that actually. Patrick Corbin faced the Dodgers sometime last week, and I played a lot of him, and he was like 3% owned, and in my opinion, was like the most talented pitcher on the slate. So I was fine with doing it, but you obviously knew that risk going in. And then, of course, through like 4 innings, he hasn't given up a run. He struck out 5, but he's already thrown like 80 pitches.
Yeah. Yeah, depth in this start will be a problem, and that is my main aversion to Wheeler. I don't think you're picking anything up of value. If he breaks the slate at 1% owned, then he breaks the slate at 1% owned.
Right, and he's like expensive enough that it's still really hard for him to break the slate.
Yeah, I mean, he's 10-4 on DraftKings, 10-2 on FanDuel. There are just way too many guys in either the 9K range or 8K range on DraftKings, or if you want to drop all the way down to Glasnow at 6,700. There's just too many other options to try to grab Wheeler in a matchup against, one of the 5 best hitting teams in baseball. I think that's a safe stance to take.
You know, I think actually is interesting to dive into is Aaron Sanchez.
I wanted you to say Jameson Taillon.
Oh, I was actually thinking
Sanchez positively or Sanchez negatively?
Sanchez actually, because I'm legitimately curious. I haven't looked at his stuff lately. He was someone that earlier in the season I kept playing, and I kept thinking he was going to be better than his numbers because he'd had a stretch of like really bad matchups, and he's someone that if you look at like movement on pitches and you look at leaderboards, he has a changeup that he started throwing this year. Basically, Marco Estrada taught it to him, and it is like 88 to 90 miles an hour, and it basically mirrors his two seamer in terms of movement. It's just slower, and he gets a bunch of swinging strikes, and like it's a really good pitch, but it hasn't translated yet, at least. But so I'm actually curious to see if it even looks the same since he came back from the disabled list, because if like he's cheap on DraftKings. I mean, he's $1,000 less expensive than Mike Leake is.
He's 11% expected owned. He is the only guy in double digits below Mike Leake.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think he's a better pitcher than that price tag for sure.
I've wanted him to be good for a while. When he was a high end prospect, that was like the height of my baseball interest. I didn't stop reading it. Every Baseball America prospect book, every baseball prospectus book. Anytime Keith Law spoke, I was either listening to it or reading it. And the Blue Jays broke him. They took a guy that was, their top pitching prospect, or at least one of the top two pitching prospects in their system, and changed just about everything with regards to his delivery. And he has never been the same since.
Yeah.
And he's just a guy that I've always been rooting for on the back end because I think he kind of got a raw deal.
Yeah, I mean, the talent's there. Like, there's no reason for this guy not to be good. It's really frustrating. His changeup still, even since coming back from the disabled list, has nearly a foot of arm side run at 88 miles an hour. Like, it's a ridiculous pitch.
Yeah, but I have the horizontal movement up now. No crazy drop offs or four seamers moving a little bit less.
Yeah,
in his most.
But even like that, that's a ton of run for a four seam fastball.
Sure. Let's take a look and see, since Sanchez is so predominantly, three pitches, a little bit of curve, but sinker, four seamer.
That was actually something. Now that you mentioned it, that was something he started doing earlier this year too. He was throwing his curveball more, and it was leading to better outcomes. And then I think he stopped doing it.
So the Rays have been above average against fastballs, above average against curveballs. What they're really rough against, sliders, cutters. Not so sure that Sanchez has the pitch mix that has been giving the Rays fits.
He has been throwing his curveball more again, which is good just in general, I think. So I just pulled it up. Looking at the numbers on that changeup against right-handed hitters this year, he's thrown it 24% of the time. He has a 22% swinging strike rate on that changeup. And then against lefties, 11% swinging strike rate, throwing it 25%.
And that's a key takeaway there for this particular game. Rays lineup projecting only 3 right-handed hitters: Matt Duffy, CJ Cron, and Willy Adames. So
yeah,
I don't really care what you're throwing to Willy Adames. I'm not particularly worried about your pitch mix for that one. Right. Duffy, probably a similar story. Projects with a 102 ISO via steamer. These are guys that are generally not doing anything with mistakes. Cron, the only one where he'll hit it a long way if it goes the wrong direction. I have a lot of trouble getting to Sanchez. I can't. He's just another guy where that's a tough. I don't think the Rays are a particularly good lineup by any means, but if it's that many lefties against Sanchez, they're scrappy. They're just I don't think the Rays are going to blow up on Sanchez, but it definitely limits what Sanchez can do. I don't see him just mowing through these guys.
Yeah, and his numbers against lefties are concerning too. Just a 14.5% strikeout rate with a 16.5% walk percentage. But then against righties, he's at like a 20% strikeout rate and a 9% walk percentage. So his actual outcomes actually do line up with the swinging strike stuff that we've seen on that changeup to righties compared to lefties. I mean, the price tag I think is appealing, but it's just there are some matchups here where I would be like playing a ton of Sanchez, and this is not one of them.
Yeah, I agree. I'm starting to think that I'm not going to have very much below Framber Valdez, maybe.
Yeah, I do think he's interesting.
So do I. 26% ownership for me right now, but we are projecting 18, which kind of gives me a little bit of pause. But at some point, I got to play somebody that's
I wish that
under 7,000.
It would be nice if like the Minnesota implied run total jumps to like 4, because people will just start backing off.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to see more people go to Sanchez, I guess.
What about Jordan Zimmermann? You have anything on him?
That's a great sentence. What about Jordan Zimmermann? He's not a guy that normally grades out all that well for me.
I go back and forth on him so much because he's got a good slider, and then when he throws it, he gets swings and misses. But then other times he's just really bad.
Yeah, he's not a guy that is popped with any sort of volume. We're projecting 8% ownership. I only have 4. He's just sort of a guy that shows up for me.
Yeah, he's priced up too. Like 7,300 for him is
that's healthy.
Pretty expensive, yeah.
That's healthy.
42% slider in his last start against the Yankees.
Let's take one last look at another pitcher. We'll call this Wednesday show the pitcher process show. Cruising through all the pitchers today, but I think it's a really unique slate of pitching options today.
Yeah, it really is. There's like not that many great ones, but like that, whenever that happens, it's just like, and we're seeing it, I think today, whenever it's like limited great options, people just decide that like the best of the not very good options is like who everyone should play.
Right. Jamison Taillon, 9,900 on DK, 1% expected ownership. $9,300 or $9,300 on FanDuel, 3% expected ownership. Pirates, big time favorites against the Reds. I have quite a bit more Taillon than the public. It's weird to me that he is essentially unowned on DraftKings. Is he someone that you normally go to by any chance?
Yeah, I like him a lot. Especially, I like him more at home, and I like him against right-handed heavy lineups. So we have him at home. Probably not a right-handed heavy lineup here. I don't think I'll have a ton. Like I'll probably, if weather cooperates, I would probably go. Like I could go Kopech over him.
I agree,
and I'd probably have more Glass now than him.
20%. Ryu is the projection on DraftKings, 10% on FanDuel. Like I see Taillon in this. Well, let's take one quick look at how the Reds have been against sort of Taillon's pitch mix to see if that fits at all. But he just seems like a guy that has way more ceiling than being a 1% owned guy today.
Yeah. So
Taillon this season. 4-seamer, sinker, too many pitches. Let's grab the Reds now. Reds bugaboo. They mash cutters. So no worry there for me. Does not throw a cutter. They've struggled pretty mightily against curveballs and changeups. They've been relatively neutral against fastball slider stuff. What's his biggest out pitch?
It's been his slider lately. Ever since he started throwing it like halfway through the year.
25% whiffs per swing on the slider, 25 on the fastball, 37% whiffs per swing on its curveball. I feel like he could rack up a ton of strikeouts here. Unless I'm crazy.
I think he can. Like the thing that concerns me is just the amount of like left-handed hitters. He's struck out like 26% of righties this year and like 19% of lefties.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously not going to get Votto.
Right.
That'll be a tough sell. How is he at holding runners?
Absolutely god-awful.
Really? So the interesting spot for Billy Hamilton, I guess?
And Jose Peraza, yeah.
Hamilton, though, from the left side. Plus...
Yeah, it's kind of a split for me because Hamilton's a lefty, which is better, but Peraza doesn't strike out.
Yeah.
And Hamilton does.
So,
yeah, I like both of those guys just as like one-offs if you're not playing Taillon.
I'm starting to have some interest here, but I just don't know what to think. He's a guy that
Yeah,
I
I
want to
mean-
have some shares of for sure.
He's a good pitcher. It's just another one where I feel like it's an unlikely spot for a ceiling game. Like he probably pitches fine and gets you like 22 points or something.
I think that's a reasonable stance to take. I thought the Reds would be a little bit worse, at least somewhere, and they haven't been. I want them to be.
Like I think it's pretty unlikely that Tyon outscores Nick Pivetta by enough to warrant that price tag very often.
Yeah, so the easy way to detail that out, same percentages that I was talking about before. On DraftKings, I do it for top 2 pitcher. Tyon, 15% chance of being a top 2 scoring pitcher on DraftKings. Pivetta, 16%. So, I think they're very similar in terms of upside. One of them costs $1,700 less. Just a safer spot. I'd rather have that extra $1,700 to upgrade from Mike Leake to who's at 76? Jose Quintana.
Right. God, I hate Jose Quintana, but I agree with you.
Yeah. You and Jake should do a Jose Quintana hate show.
I think I actually hate every Cubs pitcher now that I think about it.
I think I like them all. Jake's a Cubs fan too, and he just hates everybody. Hates Lester.
Lester's like my least favorite pitcher in baseball.
Well, then you guys need a Cubs pitching hate show because he was not fond of Quintana. I just liked him because he's $100 cheaper than Roark, and 23% Roark is outlandish.
Yeah.
Man, if Chalk hits today, we are in trouble.
Yeah, that is true.
Because I'm trying to get away from almost all of it outside of... Well, I do think it's interesting that Ryu is still 20. Like, I get him and he's 20% owned.
Yeah, I think like him and Pivetta are the two guys that they make sense to me at their ownership.
Yeah, I think they're reasonable chalk plays.
Yeah.
I mean, the Mets are terrible.
Yeah, they are.
80 weighted runs created plus against lefties this year. Oh, what did you say?
I just hate, like, I have an aversion to taking expensive Dodgers pitchers, except for Clayton Kershaw. But I still think Ryu is a fine play.
Okay. That was a good look through all the pitching today. Did you have anything else you were looking to touch on?
No, I think we've pretty much established that there's a lot of mediocre pitching, and my game plan at least is going to be to just go to the ones who aren't popular and then also take risk on guys like Kopech and Glasnow.
Yeah, we are going to have very similar pitcher pools today. Once again, if you're interested in winning a free month of all access content at awesemo.com, in the comments section to this video, our early morning strategy video, or the live before lock video tonight, so long as you get that in before lineups lock, project Michael Kopech's FanDuel points tonight. Closest person, and you can go over, will win that free month. We will have from A to B coming up at 2:30. Andrew and Ben taking a look at probably a little bit of golf, a little bit of college football. They'll be dipping their toe into all sorts of different pools. Deeper dive tonight. Adam and Laffy again breaking down these 12 games leading into live before lock. Chris and Jake doing their show all the way up until lock. And then tonight, Wednesday night, I think probably around 9 o'clock, though it is unconfirmed, Adam and Ben doing their pre-lock golf show, getting ready for tomorrow. Tune into that. Michael Kopech giving you free. I said Amazon.com this morning while we were on our stream. I don't know why that rolled off the tongue so easily, but yeah, Michael Kopech has the chance to give you a free month. Check that out. Tomorrow, process show, myself and Laffy. The slate is awful. I think we have a 3-gamer.
Tomorrow?
Yeah. Let me just double check it. Yeah, so we have the Padres start at 6:40, and then it's a 3-game set after that. Only 4 games for tomorrow. Guess what, people? The process show is taking a closer look at NFL process as we get started. Tomorrow, the start of the NFL season. We are going to go a little bit deeper into the way that we approach playing DFS for the NFL. So check that out. If you're clamoring for any NFL content, you're in luck. Tomorrow, 11 a.m., myself and Laffy. Adam, anything else?
No, should be a fun slate tonight, I think.
I'm oddly excited now. I wish I could just fast forward time to 6:45 and get all my stuff.
I just love ownership slates where you can just kind of play that game instead of predicting pitchers and stuff.
Yeah, I feel like we should have just lied for the past 3 hours just to keep like Glasnow and Kopech down and keep Roark and Leak up. Play those guys.
Mike Leake is the best pitcher in baseball. I'd absolutely love him.
Yeah. I don't know what emoji I need to put on after that to let people know that I'm not serious, but trick enough people to think that I am serious. But I'll work on that. That's all I got, everybody. Best of luck tonight. You will see us at the top of the leaderboard when all of these ownership fades work out. Later, everybody.